Welcome everyone to our webinar, Systems of Action. So again, really excited to talk about how we see this evolve in the financial services landscape. We have an exciting agenda for all of you. We are going to talk about just putting the landscape in play, right? Which is, okay, what are the mega forces shaping the financial services industry? We are all aware of the themes that are kind of, troubling us as well as getting us excited. So kind of delving that into a little bit deeper is important. We jump into how do we operationalize AI in financial services? That's the big question on everyone's minds. You want to go deeper into it. We want to describe systems of action to you. It's a new framework that a lot of our clients are already using to talk about this operationalization of AI in the core enterprise. So looking forward to getting your questions, feedback as we go along and have this conversation. And we don't want to leave it there. We do want to talk about, okay, so if this is systems of action, what does it mean for me, right? What does it mean for my firm? How should I be thinking about it? And what happens to the target addressable market, right? If I have to do a spoiler alert out here, like, yes, the target addressable market is going to go up. So if you are with us in the end of the discussion, you're going to look at our detailed analysis in terms of what's the addressable market, how is the spend going to evolve, and if you are a banking, capital markets, or insurance enterprise, or a sourcing or IT leader thinking about how to look at AI in your core enterprises, this is the webinar to attend. So we are really excited to cover all of this with you. And I hope we have some fun. Please put in your questions as we go along. I have a fantastic team of analysts with me. So we're going to have a lot of fun as we go along. So let's jump into it, right? So let's talk about the mega forces which are shaping up the entire enterprise as we look at it. So if I look at just the market, right? So again, if you look at the last 12 to 14 quarters or so, we had a very good recovery, which is like a post-COVID pent-up demand in 2021, 2022. We saw a fantastic recovery for financial services in terms of both technology and technology services spend. But if you look at the over the last few quarters, we did had a bit of a challenging environment. One, discretionary spend was under stress. In addition to that, there were massive cost takeout initiatives which most organizations were running. These were around portfolio rationalization, application rationalization, systems rationalization, trying to kind of drive as much as savings to fund all the good things on AI. So yes, we were seeing all of that, and we were hoping that 2025 is going to be that recovery. You already see that trend line going up, and we are like, yes, there is a lot of recovery on the anvil. But as we looked at, the overall market scenario and how things panned out, definitely, things kind of took a different turn, right? So overall uncertainty in the market is kind of, steered through the entire conversation around tariff, the overall geopolitical issues, supply chain issues, and the macroeconomic pressure it creates in turn. So I think the recovery dream that we had, I think as we started the year, some of that kind of just gets delayed, is how I would put it. We still are very strong in terms of the fundamentals of financial services as an industry, but yes, there are some near-term headwinds that we need to kind of work around as we look at this market. So Abhimanyu, why don't you come in, talk about what are you seeing as it relates to the overall macro environment?
Yeah. So as we talk about some of these mega forces within the overall BFSI landscape, so what we observe is three things are happening. One is the economic volatility, AI-led disruption, climate geopolitics, and then these are overall reshaping the global power dynamics. So BFSI organization must think beyond just being reactive adjustments. So what we are trying to tell here is that a lot of these macro forces like inflation, digital shift, climate crisis are already triggering second order responses such as capital flow shock, techno-block competition, cross-border regulatory shift. But in order to stay resilient, we need to anticipate how these trends converge together and redefine risk models, customer trust, and the role that financial institutions play in this as geopolitical actors. So for BFSI firms, this means that you need to design cross-sector strategies that embed agility in capital planning, re-architecting digital infrastructure, for sovereignty and scale, and aligning your geopolitical and climate initiatives with global security and policy agenda, not just for compliance, but also to gain that competitive advantage. And as we speak about some of these mega forces, we also see that a lot of these are impacting the overall BFSI landscape as a whole. And what we have tried to put here is some of the BFSI segments that we see and how these three forces are impacting across each of these. And I'll specifically take an example of PNC insurance. So it's facing a triple threat. First, economic cycles are inflating claims cost and tightening reserves. Second, the tech and demographic shifts are pushing carriers towards AI-driven claims triage, telematics, fundamentally reshaping the overall claims experience. And third, climate and geopolitical risk. It is accelerating demand for parametric insurance, cat-linked products, as traditional models are failing to face that price volatility. A similar thing is happening in reinsurance, and the basic line for this is that BFSI leaders need to cannot think in silos. They need to force interact. And in insurance, they are redefining everything from pricing to underwriting and how risk is shared across the value chain. I'd like to bring Sakshi as well here to throw some light on a few scenarios on how she's seeing the overall BFS landscape and how it is being impacted by these mega forces.
Thank you, Abhimanyu. So I'll start with economic cycles, and I would particularly want to focus on the mortgages and lending industry, because that is one industry that is directly impacted by the interest rates, right? And what we see here is that originations remain subdued. If I talk particularly just about US, in the first quarter of 2025, we saw a mixed bag of earnings. We saw originations increase for some, but decline for some compared to the last quarter of 2024. Talking of delinquencies as well, there was a bit of a rise in the first quarter when we compared it to the last quarter, which signal that as long as interest rates remain elevated, the inflation remains elevated, we are yet to see a full-blown recovery in this industry. Talking about tech and demographics as well, I would specifically want to highlight that we are seeing both retail banks as well as asset and wealth managers investing a lot in hyper-personalization and experience, right? Because the competition, there's a heightened competition. We are seeing a next generation of users here that are focusing on personalized offers and digital experience. So we are seeing investments in, say, intelligent platforms, customer analytics, digital onboarding, and so on. So this is what we are seeing in the BFS. And as we are talking about it, let's also highlight a bit on the macro headwinds that we are seeing. And we'll also discuss on how artificial intelligence is acting as a tailwind and converting those challenges into opportunities. So if we move on, Abhimanyu, would you like to throw some light here in the what we are seeing in the industry?
Yeah. So as we see a lot of these macro headwinds, what we see here is a lot of these are getting combated, or AI is helping combat these macro headwinds, working as a tailwind nature, and it is basically helping BFSI enterprises with strategic outcomes with respect to their operations across different factors. So if I take example again from an insurance point of view, from an economic volatility perspective, inflation and reserve pressure are some of the economic headwinds which is leading to higher claims cost. But AI-driven telematics and claims triage are turning that challenge into an opportunity for faster loss adjustment and reduced fraud, delivering strategic outcomes such as cost containment and customer retention. Similarly, in reinsurance, we are seeing climate extremes and capital tightening are forcing players to move beyond their traditional actuarial models. But AI is enabling here to advance the CAT modeling, exposure management, directly supporting strategic goals around capital optimization and underwriting precision. And again, Sakshi, if you can double down on some of the examples with respect to how AI is helping the BFS landscape combat with these macro headwinds.
Sure. I would particularly want to pick regulations here, as we know that the banking and financial industry, the BFSI industry, in fact, is one of the very heavily regulated industry. So institutions are always looking for solutions where they can avoid non-compliance and hefty fines and avoid fraud losses, right? And AI is helping navigate this for them. So we are seeing a lot of solutions in areas such as fraud detection, AML monitoring, anomalous pattern detection, digital identity, entity resolution, and so on. We've even seen some of the solutions that we call as a large transaction model, which is where the AI is learning through across the transactions to learn what kind of transaction can lead to what kind of frauds. So I think what this is doing for enterprises is that it's reducing the turnaround time to detect fraud, helping them file for regulations and helping them adhere to compliance more effectively. And this is just one of the many trends, technology trends that we are seeing. And now that we are talking about it, let's also discuss the wider technology trends that we are seeing across the BFSI industry. If you move on to the next slide, I would particularly want to touch upon the first point, which is almost about 2 years, we are observing that. So for the last 2 years, institutions were focusing on cost and efficiency takeout. But now what we are seeing is that the investments are focused more towards growth and experience, right? So all the technology investments that are happening that are answering questions such as, where can I have a revenue stream? Or how can I enhance the experience of my users? But that being said, we will also continue to see investments in business resilience in the form of financial crime and compliance solutions such as fraud management and AML, cybersecurity and risk management as well. And I would like to invite Kriti here also to share her perspective specifically on technology and platform trends here. So Kriti, what do you think are the hot trends here?
Thanks, Sakshi, and thanks for taking us through all these technology services and technology trends that are disrupting the industry today. I completely resonate to your point around, given the macro headwinds, investments into business resiliency becomes very crucial today. And what this is translating into from a technology and platform perspective, two things we are definitely seeing. One is primarily around how do you define that entire platform-based operating model, which is not just looking at different aspects of the business in silos, but it is bringing together your product, your experiences, the risk, and the entire business model all going hand in hand. And the second thing that is impacted in all of it is the AI piece, right? So how do you then operationalize AI today? Because what we are seeing today from a technology adoption perspective is the gap between ambition to execution from an AI perspective is sort of widening. And enterprises today have heavily invested in AI today, but many of them are struggling to move from prototypes to production. How do you then actually realize value? So 2025, the biggest theme of the year is going to be, how do you shift from operationalizing AI into better data activation? How do you then embed it into the decisioning? And finally, how do you do that real-time process integration? So how do you close that gap, and how do you operationalize it in the entire parlance? So that is going to be the one big trend that is going to dictate how 2025 looks like, which brings me to the next section for us today. Right. So as BFSI enterprises today are doubling down on all of their AI investments, they are not just looking for technology platforms or service providers, they need these AI business value partners, as we call them. And Abhimanyu, if you can keep us moving, that means 4 things for us today. So the first being the value articulation piece. So providers today, be it the technology providers or service providers, they need to go beyond the buzzwords. How do you clearly demonstrate AI delivering values? Do you have the quantified impact across processes? Do you have actual data and not certain vague hypotheses that are driving those investments? The second piece in all of it becomes very crucial is, how do you define that path to value realization, which is about enterprises needing today a very structured approach. How do you implement AI? Is there a governance mechanism in place? Do you have the promised outcomes that are actually getting achieved? And all of this leads us to the value maximization piece, which is about you bringing all the right set of tools, accelerators that are critical to driving efficiency in all of it. So today it's not just about deploying AI, but how do you scale it quickly and effectively? That becomes the need of the hour. And lastly, how do you bring in value beyond services? So enterprises today, banks, insurance firms, financial services enterprises, wealth firms, they need partners who are bringing that ecosystem thinking together, a very platform-led mindset. How do you deliver impact that goes beyond the traditional IT or operations services delivery? And in short, being a partner today in this AI world is not about delivering those platforms and services, but delivering those measurable business value, which brings me to the first goal of the hour today. And let's be honest, right? AI today is in every BFSI boardroom agenda. There are discussions, how do I move from potential to transformation potential for this entire aspect, right? So whether you are a technology provider or a service partner, you're a bank or an insurer, you have likely seen this. So we want to hear from you today, from where you sit. Where is the toughest part of this AI journey right now? Take a moment to vote. In your view, where do you see the BFSI technology and service providers facing the biggest challenge in their AI pitches today? And we just touched upon these very briefly: value articulation, the path to that value realization, value maximization, and finally, delivering services, moving beyond services to value delivery. We're equally excited to hear from you because this is something we are hearing from clients, but today we want to hear from all of you.
It'll be interesting to see the results as they come out here.
Yeah. And as the results come out, I think, Ronak, I'll also take a moment and probably happy to hear from you as well. Overwhelmingly, more than half of our audience today feels the path to value realization is the piece that's the biggest challenge today, which is about what is that structured approach to AI implementation and governance? How do you ensure outcomes are truly achieved? Ram, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, and again, I'd say the path to value realization is an attack play on the existing debt you have across the organization, right? So this debt is across process, technology, data, talent. So how do I create a approach or a pathway, as you said, to drive this change, right? So everything from culture to the change management to the talent to the process, that everything put together. How do you drive this execution towards value realization is important, because we've seen several cycles of technology, right? So early days of RPA to cloud, and now from an AI, generative AI, agentic AI perspective, we don't want to be in a situation where the value and the ROI on the paper is strong, but the overall realized value is low. And that's where the pathway to value realization is something that we are seeing more focus on. So I'm not surprised in terms of the answer that is coming on from our attendees today.
Yeah. And I think a second, the option that's been chosen by a third of our audience today is how do you bring in business value delivery beyond the technology and the services piece? I think this is something we keep on hearing day in, day out from our clients today. So it's not just about delivering the right platform or services, but how do you articulate that value?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and just for our audience, the value maximization piece, we saw over 10% of our audience select this, while value articulation remained less than 5%. So clearly, how do you articulate that path? How do you then talk about the value realization piece? That becomes very critical. And which in turn translates into how are we seeing this manifest in this modern world of services, operations, and technology delivery, right? And I'll just talk a bit about it in the banking and financial services world. So if you look at it today, and maybe let's take an example to explain this better. So if we look at customer onboarding as a process in banking, traditionally, we have seen providers getting evaluated on turnaround time, how quickly the application is getting processed within the SLA window. But in an AI-first enterprise where value becomes very critical to be demonstrated, focus is not around turnaround time, but it is more around how can the provider leverage AI to assess that risk, how fast can you validate that identity, how best can you trigger the next action without manual delays. So it is not about how fast the task is getting completed, but it's about how fast and accurately you are making that decision. So that's the switch we are seeing today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Abhimanyu to talk about this a bit in the insurance context.
Thanks, Kriti. And then if I take the insurance example as well to illustrate this, traditionally efficiency was measured by cost per FT or SLA adherence. But in an AI first world, it's about cost per decision unit, how much value is being created for per intelligent claim resolution. In terms of risk and quality, instead of manual QA checks or audit pass rates, insurer now need AI managed exception handling and proactive compliance that prevents errors before they occur, especially under tightening regulation. For speed, it is no longer about how fast a claim is processed, but the time to decision or action, how quickly the AI engine or adjuster together can resolve and settle that claim. And then finally, human involvement moves from labor arbitrage to strategic roles, handling exception flagged by AI, overseeing model performance, continuously improving the decision frameworks. And this evolution is critical to realize the full promise of outsourcing in a world where AI isn't just augmenting work, it's redefining the matrix that matter. And Ronak, if you could help us understand why have enterprises not able to leverage that value in the form it should be in the AI first world, and if I can talk about as we move to the next part of this webinar, how to unlock that value and action from all the information and insights that the BFSI enterprises have.
Yeah, and if I reflect on the last 3 quarterly, our roundtables that we've done in financial services with our enterprise customers, one thing that has consistently come across is, hey, we are doing a lot of AI pilots or deployment, but a lot of them are on the fringes, right? Those are not in the core operations of what we run as a bank or as a capital market firm or as a retirement firm or as an insurance firm. And we see that most of our core technologies and surround systems, right, we call them as core and core augmentation. We are investing heavily in terms of building dashboards, databases, right, intelligence. So we have all that we need in terms of the data and intelligence. But the continuous message that is coming to us is, hey, a lot of this is data and intelligence, which is inert. We are not able to act on it. And I think that's been the biggest challenge that we have seen in the path from taking what we have in terms of the data and then kind of operationalizing it in the core enterprise using the power of AI, generative AI, and everything that we're talking about today. So as we think about financial services enterprises, we believe that there's no shortage of insights, but definitely a scarcity of agents, both human and AI agents, and a system that is capable of executing on that intelligence. So that together is what we want to talk about today. When how do we look at a process? Within each process, how do we look at a combination of human and AI agents coming together, and technology, which is a system that is capable of executing on the intelligence data that we have in our enterprise context? So we want to talk about that, right? And there are several examples of it. There were a few that were so easy for me to understand in our roundtables. One that kind of stood up with me was a bank spoke about, right? We have dashboards on our systems of engagement platform where we can see which customer hasn't engaged with us for the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But that's intelligence. It's still inert. I need somebody to act on it, create a campaign or a workflow on top of it and execute. And I have to be able to do this at scale and speed. And that has been the challenge that we have seen so far, right? So before we give away a lot about systems of action and where we are coming from, let's first take a poll from everyone who is out here with us. And Sakshi, do you want to run the poll for us, please?
Sure. So this has to be one of my favorite polls from the session. And this is a scientific and a very rigorous poll, by the way, which includes everything from AI to a miracle. So you can think of it. So let's dive right in. What do you think will ultimately transform legacy BFSI enterprise systems and unlock the potential of their vast data? A dashboard with louder alerts, obviously apart from the Microsoft Teams ringtone that you keep hearing 24/7. Second, 1,000 more workflows, because the more data that you have, the more workflows you might have. Third, a small army of AI agents. And fourth, miracle, which let's say we call systems of action. So let's vote. Okay. I think we have really, really interesting answers. So just for the audience, I'd like to tell that almost 60%, 63% of our audience are saying that a small army of AI agents is what we need. And no surprises here. As we just said, a lot of enterprises are putting a lot of all their arsenal into AI. So that makes sense. But 37% of people also believe that a miracle is needed. Ronak, what do you think? What's your perspective here? Ronak, you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I think AI agents, definitely the small army of AI agents, I would have voted that for myself because miracles are hard to go by. But let's talk about miracles, right? Because I want to talk about systems of action to all of you. I don't think it's a silver bullet answer or the, or kind of a miracle out here, but it's a iterative approach, right? We want to talk about it. So let's define what it is, right? So that we've been using the word for a while, but we haven't defined it. So as we look at from a systems of action perspective, we believe this is an architectural evolution to bring enterprise AI into life, right? So as you are looking at a single process, you want to make sure that you are able to bring the data in the process. So you're able to activate the data in the process. For each step in the process, you are able to create decisioning intelligence, and then you're able to orchestrate the whole process together so that you know that there are several complex workflows and pieces that will go along. So how can you manage that? And while we do all of that, you want it to be secured and compliant, right? So the ability to take every process that we run as an organization, right, be it in sales, marketing, HR, claims, right, underwriting, or IT, right, take every process. How do I activate the data in the process, build decisioning intelligence on top of it, orchestrate the process, and then make sure it is secured and compliant, is where systems of action comes in, right? It's not a third layer of technology. Again, it's not like, okay, we had systems of records and engagement and action. It's basically transforming existing systems of record, systems of engagement, systems of insight to do a lot more, right? So that is what we are looking at. It is evolution of existing technology layers being powered by AI and agentic AI to be able to drive this transformation. So systems of action should enable execution at scale. It should help us to move from what we were doing, a lot more of process automation, work automation, to actually autonomy. So it's allowing us to do more intelligent orchestration, right, in terms of decision making, as well as self-actioning systems, and truly solve this gap that we have when it comes to the intelligence to execution gap. So it's very important to kind of look at how all of this comes out. So let's, I want to show you and versus kind of, talk more about it. So we'll play a video out here to talk about systems of action with reinsurance as an example. So let's hear the video and then we'll come back to you.
In reinsurance, speed, accuracy, and foresight aren't optional, they're everything. But too much of the industry still runs on legacy systems and handoffs. Underwriting, claims, accounting, all slowed by data inconsistencies and manual reconciliation. Treaty modelling, still done quarterly, or worse, ad hoc. These aren't inefficiencies, they're vulnerabilities. Yes, reinsurance firms have built dashboards, intelligence, data models. But here's the problem, they still depend on someone to act. Plenty of insights, not enough agents, human or AI, to execute them. Systems of action aren't just platforms. They sense, decide, and act in real time. With systems of action, catastrophe modelling becomes continuous. Underwriting turns predictive. Accounting is event-driven. Claims payments, frictionless. 2025, the global reinsurance industry will spend $1.2 billion on systems of action. By 2030, that number will hit $3.5 billion. But the real power? Systems of action doesn't just automate what we do, it changes who we can become. From hindsight to foresight, from operators to value creators, from lagging to leading, by default. This isn't an IT upgrade, it's a business model evolution. With systems of action, the system acts so you can lead.
So this is amazing, right? Again, it kind of just beautifully articulates the power of systems of action and reinsurance. There's a white paper, so we would advise all of you to kind of go through that. It gives you the detailed roadmap and plan of how do you do this, right? Again, over the next 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months, and beyond that. And what are the activities you need to do to get there, right? So we are making this real and kind of, driving detailed point of view. But Abhimanyu, why don't you take one example for us, and let's take the PNC insurance example.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what we are talking here is a similar example to what we saw in the reinsurance piece to PNC insurance. And as PNC insurance moves from fragmented manual process to agentic AI-enabled systems of action where decision-making is automated, intelligent, and adaptive. So before SOA, key functions such as claims or underwriting relied on static models, manual triage, delayed processes. But with SOA, what we'll see is a pivot to real-time routing, fraud detection, instant settlements, accelerating both outcomes as well as customer satisfaction. If we look at distribution and agent enablement, outdated CRMs and low lead conversion are being replaced by AI prioritized lead scoring, automated policy recommendation, which will in turn boost the sales efficiency as well as the agent productivity. The actuarial models are also ones which were updated infrequently, now recalibrate continuously using real world data stream, claims, weather, telematics, enabling real-time pricing decision. Even in the compliance and servicing space, AI delivers game-changing capabilities from automated regulatory logic to self-serving policy changes, dramatically reducing the human error as well as increasing the agility of the system. So the bottom line here is that agentic AI through systems of action doesn't just improve the performance, it redefines what PNC insurers can deliver in terms of speed, accuracy, and experience at scale. Now I would like to bring here Kriti as well to talk about what is basically blocking or impeding the enterprises from enabling SOA within the overall BFSI landscape as a whole.
Sure, Abhimanyu. And I know in the last few minutes, we have seen the promise that systems of action holds for us today. But I also want us to spend a moment on seeing how things are on ground and what's the reality today. The way we see banks, financial services enterprises, and insurers today, they are burdened by different forms of debt, as we call it. And it's not financial debt, but it's debt of multiple types. So let's start with the data debt. Enterprises today, no dearth of data, but fragmented, outdated, inaccessible. So let's say a large bank having customer data scattered across legacy core banking, CRM systems, loan applications, and it becomes very impossible to drive real-time decision-making. Tech debt, which is about your legacy systems, the hard-coded workflows that make it very difficult to plug in these new capabilities, right? So think of it, an insurer relying on a 20-year-old platform with hard-coded tools. They cannot really support these new AI models or API enablement. Next comes the process debt piece, which becomes very, very critical. We just saw the video a few moments back. So rigid, undocumented processes that don't really help automate or orchestrate for processes today. So let's take claims handling. Routed manually today still, poor documentation, limited visibility across channels. And lastly, the talent debt, which is about lack of the right digital AI governance skills. Even the best platform cannot really help deliver the outcome. So skill set becomes very crucial today in operationalizing all of it. These kind of debts exist today. They are not fictitious. They really exist today. They are slowing down the transformation and they are impacting the enterprise's ability. How do you turn insights into action? Which brings me to the last poll of the day today, right? And Abhimanyu, if you can keep us moving. Since we have looked at the different types of debt that are holding back enterprises, I want us to take a pause and think about in your conversations today, if you are an enterprise, if you are a technology and a service provider, what is really holding you back in terms of modernizing and helping your enterprises achieve this? So which of these following debts you believe is very, very critical that needs to be resolved if you have to achieve that promise of systems of action? Is it the process debt? Is it the technology debt? Or is it the skill debt and the data debt? So we'll take a moment for our audience to plug in the responses.
I think, Kriti, you should have also had an option of all of the above, but we'll see what the response comes in.
Yeah. And as I see this, I think no doubt about it. Given we have touched upon all of these and for our audiences, it's a very close tie, as I can call it. The data debt, 32% of you believe that's very, very critical, that needs to be resolved. Close second comes in the tech debt at 29%. Third piece is the skill debt. So how do you operationalize everything, the right people, which is at 25%. Process debt comes in fourth at 14%. But I think leaving aside the percentages, we see all of these become very crucial in varying intensities. We have seen them play out in varying intensities across enterprises. I don't know, Ronak, if you have any thoughts to add.
No, I would say I do see all of them, but where I see the work is really hard is across data and process. I think these are two areas where we are seeing significant amount of challenges and underinvestment. So, and I agree that technology from a financial services perspective, right? We still talk about mainframes, and we're talking about the next generation of mainframe that can power AI right now. So definitely this evolution from a legacy core systems is not going to go away. So we do see our systems of record not evolving at that pace. So I understand the technology number also coming that high, but in my experience, the process and data that are the harder to solve right now.
Yeah, I agree, Ronak. And given we have touched upon these challenges and we have acknowledged those, the real question then becomes is, how do I then actually enable these systems of action today, right? What are the building blocks of these systems of action given so many of these challenges exist today? So the way we are seeing here at Everest Group, how do you then operationalize these systems of action? The biggest piece is you need to start with data activation. So you cannot automate or personalize anything till you have some real-time data flowing across your systems. And this is where your data engineering teams, the architects, the enterprise architects play a very critical role. The next piece that comes in all of that data activation piece is how do you then enable that decisioning? How do you operationalize AI that is actually embedded into your workflows? So this is where your AI, ML, COEs and the team come into the play today. The third piece or the third building block into all of this is orchestrating the processes. So how do you then build these adaptive processes that respond to this real-time data? They are not just executing static rules. And this is where your automation teams, the operations transformation leads, all of these come into play. Lastly, given we are talking BFSI, security and compliance cannot be ignored. None of this works in this industry without trust. So this is where CISOs and the risk leaders need to enforce these policy decisions. They need to have access to a dynamic distributed tech stack that enables and brings everything together. And these are the 4 core building blocks that we are seeing today. I'll now hand it over to Sakshi, who will then bring this to life in the lending world with the loan application examples.
Kriti. So let's just contextualize what Kriti just talked about, and we'll take one simple process of a customer logging in a request for a loan, right? And this simple process also activates all the archetypes that Kriti just talked about. So if I talk one by one, the data activation platforms, such as your credit bureau APIs and your income verification engine, they start pulling data as soon as the customer logs in the request. If you go to decisioning platform, such as risk scoring models and pre-screening rules engine, what they are doing, they start determining the pre-qualification of the customer based on the data that was just being pulled. Process orchestration platform then routes the applications to appropriate channels. So based on whatever pre-qualification was done, it could be routed to either pre-approved or requires more documents and so on. And while all of this is happening, the security and compliance platforms and solutions are working throughout, right? So your eKYC, encryption, ensuring that your data privacy norms are met, all of these are acting together, right? And I would also like to bring in Ronak here. Ronak, would you want to add any of the perspectives here?
Yeah, no, and again, Sakshi, as you are thinking through this, right, my head was going in the direction as what Kriti mentioned earlier as well, right? Which is how do you kind of, for every process, right? Again, this is a good example. For every process, I think it becomes very important, as I said, right? The data is the harder piece of the work that we want to do, which is activating the data. And I think let's explain that a little bit better, which is how do we take the right quality of data, the relevant contextual information, and bring it at the time of taking the action for the process. And it's a very hard thing, right? Because we struggle with data quality, lineage, governance, and kind of bringing it together at the point of taking the action and activating it, and then running intelligence on top of it to power these actions and actions in the process, right? Because that is where the power of AI, specifically agentic AI, is the ability to run these processes. And that's where systems of action is so important. and I think what we are doing, I think in terms of taking this in a very process first view is very powerful, right? So before we delve into more of systems of action and talk to you about how this overall market expands, right? Because yes, a lot of you have come here is to talk about, okay, what does it mean for me as a provider, or what does it mean for me as an enterprise in terms of the ecosystem that I can tap into? So before we do that, we do have a complimentary offer for all of you. So if you are a banking, financial services, or insurance enterprise, and if you need help in terms of looking at strategic guidance on systems of action roadmap, we have built these across processes. There are already 14 odd of these built out, and we are building a lot more. So if you need help in specific processes and want to request a complimentary offer, this is a link for all of you as a financial services enterprise. We'll be happy to have a conversation with you. We have roadmap for business operations and technology leaders and how they need to think about systems of action, not just from a technology and process perspective, but also from a strategy, culture, change management perspective. So happy to kind of provide an overview to that. The second offer that we have for you is if you are a technology provider and you are thinking about how are we ready in terms of our product and our roadmap from a systems of action readiness, Kriti and team have a fantastic framework built out for all of us in terms of doing a readiness assessment. It is a very simple framework. Happy to kind of work with you to assess the readiness of your platform, your technology in a specific area within financial services to drive this, right? So if you are a technology provider and you have a offering you believe is aligned to systems of actions and you want us to do a capability review, we are happy to kind of provide that as a complimentary offer. And last one, if you are an IT or a business process service provider, so we've covered all of you, right? So again, nobody left out here in this webinar is what we wanted to make sure. If you are an IT or business process service provider, let's have a conversation, right? So choose a specific systems of action area and we'll be happy to kind of go deep dive with you, because I understand you are the ones who are taking systems of action and driving the process outcomes, technology outcomes, and we want to help you to make sure that you are able to kind of do that at scale, right? So with that, let's keep moving, right? So Abhimanyu, I think that we are very close to the last few sections. So last 10 minutes, we want to make sure that we are also keeping some time for question and answer. So let's get started.
Yeah. So Ronak, just before that, if you can throw some light about what we have talked till now is what is SOA, how is it impacting the different value paradigms across the BFSI segments, what capabilities would enterprise need to build SOA within their organization. But here in this section, we'll make it more real and tangible for everyone to understand. We'll unpack the TAM for SOA, talk about enterprise spend realignment, outsourcing, spend disruptions, and different SOA capabilities and categories. So Ronak, I'll give it over to you to first double down how we are seeing this market from a spend and TAM perspective. So if you can help make it real for everyone to understand this at an overall level.
No, again, happy to, right? So one of the first things we told today is, hey, as we think about systems of action, this dramatically increases the target addressable market if you are a provider serving the clients, but also for clients, right? Because this helps you to understand that technology, specifically AI, agentic AI, can impact a lot more beyond what you're looking at. So if I look at enterprise IT and technology services, a lot of us will say, yes, our IT and technology spend is anywhere between 5 to 10% of our revenue. There are a few folks who are even higher than that, but that's been the general range that we have seen. So that has been the target addressable market for a lot of technology and services providers, which is sizable, right? If I look at North America, BFSI, that's a big market, and we agree to it. But what we are seeing out here is, as you look at core processes that organizations run, and as soon as you start talking about not just the IT and technology spend, but the entire operation spend, you are now going after a much bigger TAM out here, right? And the potential of systems of action influencing this TAM is way bigger, is what we are seeing. And even with a 12% penetration by 2030, it becomes an $800 billion market when it comes to financial services, right? So it's a huge market that we're kind of tapping into. So we wanted to make sure that we cover that and we talk to you about it, because at one end, we do see some of the traditional markets, which is the IT technology services market. We are starting to see that shrinkage happen, right? So if we are looking at in a systems of action scenario, and if you are only focused on the traditional IT technology services market, you are looking at a shrinkage of the market. But if you are looking at driving process outcomes for your customers, you are looking to kind of drive systems of actions and operationalizing AI in the core enterprise, you are looking at an additional $350 billion bump. And that is what we are looking at, which is, hey, there's a huge market opportunity that is staring in right in front of us, and you want to make sure that you are ready for it. And talking about readiness, Kriti, do you want to give a teaser of the readiness framework that we have, that we offered for our technology provider?
Definitely, Ronak. Definitely. And I think what we have seen so far is the why. Why do we need systems of action? We have seen how are they relevant. We have seen how big is the size. But the way we need to also look at this market is where are enterprises and the technology and the service providers really standing today in the systems of action journey. And what you're seeing on the slide is, think of this as the capability maturity spectrum across the 4 core foundational pillars that I had highlighted earlier, across data activation, decisioning, process orchestration, and security and compliance. The way we are seeing this, many of the providers today and even enterprises are operating at a basic level, so which is about your batch data is existing. You have these rule-based decisioning engines. There is an evolution that is happening. So as you move from basic to evolving to leading, we are seeing some bit of real-time data pipelines coming in. There is AI-assisted decisioning, some event-driven workflows emerging, which is where some of these partnerships with tech and service providers are helping propel enterprises to truly visualize the systems of action. But very few are reaching that SOA grade maturity, as we call it, where we have these autonomous agents that are executing in real time, you're coordinating complex processes, you're dynamically enforcing compliance, right? So if I take a step back, what is this slide? I would call it as, for the enterprises, this is your transformation roadmap. This is your North Star, where you want to be by 2030. For technology and service providers, it's a litmus test. Are your offerings truly enabling your clients to move up this curve? Or are you just reinforcing and building on top of legacy? So that's just one key question to look at. And this is what this capability maturity spectrum will help answer. But as we go ahead, Ronak, one thing is, given this is a capability maturity spectrum, this has to head somewhere, right? So it cannot hit a ceiling, which is where we are seeing a glimpse into how the future tech landscape is going to evolve. How will this technology landscape look like, where the BFSI enterprises are operating in 2030, which is just 5 years from now? Each of these core SOA pillars that we talked about, data activation, decisioning, process, data is captured in silo, in batches, decisioning is happening manually, processes are following static workflows. But as the industry evolves, we will see them evolve into action orchestration platforms, which is these platforms running the core business functions today, imbibing the true vision of data decision process coming together. Security and compliance will play more of the governance role. How do you then monitor those bias? How do you enforce explainability? But the true catch here is 2 new categories are going to emerge by 2030, which do not exist today. The first is these autonomous agent networks, which is where human and digital agents are actually coming together, for instance, handling claims intake, making loan servicing faster in real time. And lastly, the synthetic enterprise builders, which is, think of these platforms that are simulating the risk models in real time, simulating these compliance workflows in real time. Think of customer journeys you want to test out in different scenarios before going live. So this is like going to be a virtual testing ground that is going to transform BFSI. So this is how we are seeing the tech landscape evolve, categories merging, new categories emerging. So that's going to be, I would say, next 5 years, how the state of flux remains. And to wrap up, just to give you all a glimpse that how this future state is going to look like, right? So it's not just about evolving platforms, it's about these new categories that is going to reshape how technology and services are going to operate in the BFSI enterprise world. Action orchestration platforms will become the new operating core, bringing together data, process, decisioning. Trust safety orchestrator will become essential to AI, ensuring governance, bias monitoring, explainability. Autonomous agent networks, human digital agents coming together, and finally, these synthetic enterprise builders that are allowing enterprises to simulate these journeys in real time, all before going live. Think of the risks you can solve for and account for. So these are not far off concepts. I think we are seeing early examples emerge from some of the providers we have mentioned here. So we are seeing definitely work and investments happening in this, but the big question is, are you and your ecosystem really building towards this future? I don't know, Ronak, if you want to add some bit of the closing remarks before we take up some of the questions.
No, and I think you kind of covered it well, right? So how do we think about new technologies coming in? So for our sourcing leaders, procurement leaders on the call, this also means that you're thinking of new categories that you need to manage, regroup your suppliers across these modern categories so that you are able to understand their capabilities, do like-to-like comparison, and work with the world-class technology and services providers who are helping you build these future systems of actions, make sure that you have the right technology, make sure it is secured, compliance, and that army of AI agents that Sakshi talked about. Yes, absolutely, right? Again, kind of building that and bringing it all together, right? So we want to make sure that we do take questions now. So we have a few questions that were coming along as we were doing the the registration, but also while the event is live. So we want to take a few of them. So if you have any more questions, feel free to put that in the chat. We'll take those for the next 5-6 minutes before we wrap up as we go along out here, right? So there's one question that came up out here, and I wanted to make sure that we cover that. Can a data fabric be considered as a facilitator for systems of action? So that was one question that came up. And I think, Kriti, you were talking about data activation and all of that was coming out, right? So as I was reflecting on that, one thing that came to me is getting the data and activating it in the process is important. So definitely data fabric is that journey towards that. So how do we think about that is going to be important. So I truly agree that yes, data fabric is part of that data activation decisioning intelligence. And then if you can add layers of process orchestration and agentic AI, you actually make them as components of your action orchestration platforms. So we do see that definitely to kind of come out here. Kriti, anything you want to add before I take the next question?
No, I think, Ronak, you've covered it. And what we also mentioned is when we were looking at the capability maturity spectrum, data fabric is there on the extreme right, the SOA grade enterprise vision.
Yeah. So there are a few more, right? There's another one which I do want to take because it's a very interesting question. Again, another one around data, right? How does use of highly regulated data sets like credit bureau data factor into these systems of actions? And again, this is so interesting, right? Because if I think about it is similarly the way we are looking at agents, and we are talking about an ecosystem or an army of agents and being able to communicate with each other with these modern context protocols, MCPs, and A2A communication layers. We also want to, I think, underscore that it's all is dependent on high quality data. So the ability to bring this high quality data, be it a credit bureau data or a third party risk data, weather data, whatever it is, right? Again, giving all of that and activating that in the enterprise context is going to be important. Now, the providers of these data, right, credit bureau and other firms, will not just be providing data anymore. They will be providing agents that are acting on top of that data, right? Or at least agents that who can help you communicate with that data. So think about the future in another 5 years or even lesser than that. We will have agents in our BFSI enterprise that is talking to the credit bureau agents and getting the information that they need and being able to kind of take the credit decisioning, being able to take risk decisioning based on that agent to agent communication that happens, right? So gone are those expensive, heavy API based calls. Now the monetization framework will evolve for credit bureaus as well, and also as financial services firms that tap into them. So definitely this becomes very interesting as we kind of think about all of this.
Yeah, and Ronak, if I may add to that, given we are looking at a very 2030 vision, one of the technology categories we looked at was synthetic enterprise builders. So a lot of these data providers, the credit bureau data example we just talked about, is going to contribute to a lot of the simulation and scenario calculation that BFSI enterprises can actually do.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I'll take one more question, and then we'll try to address all the other questions over a chat as well. So there's one which was about what are some of the practical applications of generative AI and agentic AI that we expect to see in 2025. I'll start with one that I think I completely agree is going to be changing how we think about process, and I want to talk about IT as an area, right? If you look at the rate at which we are developing these co-pilots or development, agents, right? Again, if you think about how the world of IDE is changing and agentification of IDE that is happening, right? Be it with what Microsoft announced recently at Microsoft Build, what AWS, is working towards with Amazon Q and several of others. IDE providers in the market and all the acquisition news that is there around OpenAI acquiring a few more capabilities. So I think the best use case is about software development and how it is accelerating the entire software development lifecycle. So not just being able to do code development, but the entire activities that a software developer is being able to do, right? So I think that's one of the most practical application of generative AI that we have seen. But I don't know, Abhimanyu, Sakshi, Kriti, any other examples you want to take?
Very good.
So yeah, Abhimanyu, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So I think one of the things, Ronak, we're increasingly seeing in the wealth context is how do you then operationalize AI for advisors? So how do you go beyond just generating those next best action, summarization of their portfolio, summarization of meetings? So we are definitely seeing a lot of the impact of agentic AI coming in those pieces, which is how do you then streamline front, mid, back office, bring it all together, the processes, the real-time data flowing in. So that is one of the pieces we are increasingly seeing from our clients. And I know we're at the top of the hour, but yeah, Ronak.
Yeah, no, again, thank you for the examples. And again, there are a few questions which are in the chat. We couldn't answer them, so we'll make sure we kind of get back to you and answer on the chat. And also looking forward to the ongoing conversation. Thank you everyone for joining and listening into our webinar.